friends. It's always a privilege to be back at CI. And I believe in the conviction of all CI students and CI faculty members. The ones in CI always listen. This is 100th anniversary of two seminal documents. This is the 100th anniversary of two seminal documents. One written by them in 1916 called Transformative, The second one was also written in 1916 by a young PhD scholar, I think in the same age, PhD scholar who lost his life, sacrificed his life away from Buddha. He was also a Dalit PhD scholar at Columbia University, who was doing his PhD in economics, but wrote, crossed the disciplinary boundaries, and wrote a seminar paper in anthropology, which is now a defining document on the social conditions of India. The name of the scholar was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The name of this document is Caste in India. 1916 में कोलंबिया विश्वविद्यालय के एक पीएचडी विद्यार्थी के रूप में डॉक्टर बी.आर. अम्बेडकर ने भारत में जाति, थोड़ा सा शीर्षक और बहुत गहरा। I think both of these documents have got now serious implications for our contemporary economic and social problems and in contemporary politics. And both have a lot to teach us whether India will remain a republic or not. इन दोनों दस्तावेजों से बहुत सीखने को मिलेगा, हमें गणतंत्र रह पाएंगे या नहीं रह पाएंगे। The stage of capitalism which we are now undergoing is a desperate stage of capitalism. It goes through crisis after crisis. In order to redeem itself from crisis, it has only one path, as both Marx and Lenin have predicted, that the path of thinking. जब पूंजीवाद अपने संकटों से के दौर से गुजरता है बार-बार, उसका एक ही रास्ता बचता है, वो है साम्राज्यवाद। दूसरे मुल्कों के प्राकृतिक संसाधनों में कब्जा करना, उनकी अर्थव्यवस्था पर कब्जा करना, और उससे भी ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण उनके मानस पर, उनके सोच पर, उनके ज्ञान पर कब्जा करना। और इसको आजकल जो नाम दिया गया है वो है न्यूलिबरल इंपीरियलिज्म, नवोदारवादी साम्राज्यवाद। क्यों स्टेट कैपिटलिज्म ये हमेशा होती है। 19वीं शताब्दी में भी हुई, जब अमेरिकी पूंजीवाद को जिंदा रहने के लिए पूरे लैटिन अमेरिका पे कब्जा करना पड़ा, उनके लोकतंत्र को नष्ट करना पड़ा, वहां पे तानाशाह स्थापित करने पड़े। और उसके बाद दूसरे महायुद्ध के बाद जब साम्राज्यवाद का वो चरण पूरा हो गया जिसको लेनिन ने जिसकी भविष्यवाणी की, तो उसके बाद एक नया इंपीरियलिज्म, नव साम्राज्यवाद स्थापित किया गया, जो आज जिसको हम खेल रहे हैं पूरी दुनिया से। And how India will engage itself with neoliberalism will decide whether it will remain a republic or not, whether the preamble to our constitution will have any meaning or refuse to do luster. And therefore, as far as Brahmins of today are concerned, I expect them to join this struggle, which is a struggle of, common struggle of all the masses of our country. And not just India, the whole subcontinent, because caste is a hegemonic, truly hegemonic concept. Even if you leave your religion, go to some other religion, the caste will be carried out. This is precisely what is happening. The Muslims in both Bangladesh and Pakistan, you could not get rid of the caste. So heavy. Truly, in the sense, in the Gramsci talk about it. And in order to maintain control over property, Ambedkar wrote in 1916 that the institution of marriage was conceived. संपत्ति पर अपना अधिकार स्थापित करने के लिए और बरकरार रखने के लिए विवाह की संस्था स्थापित की गई और उसको उसी जाति में बना के रखने के लिए संपदा उसी जाति में बने the entire wealth remains within the caste or sub-caste. Caste system was conceived. And therefore, patriarchy had to be imposed by the upper caste over the lower caste. And it follows from this understanding that if you want to demolish patriarchy, you have to demolish caste as well. Annihilation of patriarchy, annihilation of caste will go hand in hand. These are common battles, at least for our country, for subcontinent. It does not apply to Europe. Their angles defined in 1880 famous document that they are also same institution of manual conceived in order to maintain control of the property, but that's in a different context of caste. Why did I begin with reference to these two documents? It is obvious. We are fighting more battles. We are fighting battles in the entire subcontinent against the neoliberal assault on all aspects of our life. All aspects of national life. It's not just education and health. It's also about mining resources, about water, about mountains, about rivers. You know, one river has been sold. One river has been sold several years ago in Chhattisgarh. You may not have heard of it, because no media will like to report. But media is also controlled by the same neoliberal capital. It affects, more importantly, how we think, how we learn, how we teach, and what is the character of knowledge which we transact, imbibe, and internalize. It's epistemic attack. It's not just attack on a few aspects of life. But once you control the mind, then you control the whole nation and whole society. It's not the first time we hear this. We heard it in 1835 also, when Macaulay is member of the East India Council and also a director of public news, first director, maybe the first director of public instruction in Kolkata, wrote this prophetic statement in his minutes when he said that we don't have enough resources to keep the masses of this country. The rhetoric will keep getting into it. Nothing has changed. We don't have enough resources for education. Therefore, we will pick a section of this population, vast population, a section of class and caste. Educate that section only, and that section of society will become intermediary between us, the rulers, at that time the white rulers, and today the brown and black rulers. Will become an intermediary between us and the masses of this subcontinent. And the people who will educate will have the same color of the skin as the rest of this country, the subcontinent, but their thinking refer to education for many of the examples. From 1986 policy onwards, a policy note over 1986 policy onwards, one can see the signs of neoliberalism creeping in. Although that was still before the formal announcement of globalization in India. But one can see how the idea of a multi-layered school system based upon inequality and discrimination was conceived. As a policy, it was already happening through privatization starting from 1970 onward. But that was happening, that was not a policy. But now it was a policy statement that for a handful of children in rural areas, in the Navodaya Vidyalaya will be established just for a handful. And those will be selected on the basis of a concept which is totally incomprehensible in those times and today also, talent. One doesn't know what that talent is, could not be defined. At that time it cannot be defined today as well. I do not know what that is. And for the vast masses, this will be a handful. 80 in every district of more than 1 million. मुट्ठी भर लोगों के लिए नवोदय विद्यालय में उनको चयन करके परीक्षाओं में जल्दी चुना गया 80 बच्चों को देते हैं। और बाकी लोगों के लिए क्या होगा? बाकी लोगों के लिए एक नॉन फॉर्मल स्ट्रीम खोली गई, जिसमें जो टीचर होगा उसको टीचर नहीं कहा, उसको इंस्ट्रक्टर कहा। उसके बाद कोई रेगुलर स्केल नहीं होगा, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे भी नहीं होगा, वो ऐसे होगा। कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का भी एग्रीमेंट कर ले तो भारत के कोर्ट सिस्टम में दिक्कत आ सकती है, तो ऐसे ही होगा। उसको 100-200 रुपए दे देंगे, उसे कहा जाएगा कि रात को पढ़ाओ। क्यों रात को पढ़ाओ? क्योंकि गरीबों के बच्चे, देश के 80% बच्चे हैं, 80% से ज्यादा है, गरीबों के बच्चे दिन में बारमजदूरी करते हैं। उनको समय केवल शाम को होगा, देर शाम को जब घर लौटेंगे, खाना वाना खा के जब खाली होंगे फुर्सत में लालटेन के नीचे से पढ़ाओ 2 घंटे के लिए, बहुत मेजर प्रोग्राम within a matter of 2 years of the policy, 3.5 lakh centers were open. So multi-layered school system was a product of that policy, and teacher to be replaced by instructor was another product of that policy. Teacher is a teacher, instructor is an instructor, the difference between the two must be known. Therefore, my colleague talked about medium of instruction, and we are still fighting to change the rhetoric of medium of instruction to medium of education. And then there was 1991 declaration that India's economy is now ready to be looted by the global capital and global market. And we entered, as far as education is concerned, an agreement with structural adjustment. Now, India's education had to be adjusted. The whole of decade of 90 story, I don't have time to talk about now. Ample writings are there available. Lot has been written. How, under district primary education program of World Bank, the whole program was undertaken to destroy the entire state-funded education system, what we call government system. By the time 90s were ending, the pace at which government schools were being destroyed, at the same pace the private school market was growing. In the decade of 2000, the same process continued under the label of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. And I must point out here, the neoliberal attack takes care to use such terms, such terminology which are euphemistic. वो ऐसे से सुंदर शब्दों का इस्तेमाल करते हैं कि आप हमेशा फंसे रहें। वो एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल बोलेंगे, इसका मतलब किसी के लिए शिक्षा, एजुकेशन फॉर नन। जब सर्व शिक्षा अभियान बोलेंगे तो मतलब वो शिक्षा नहीं देते, all our views, whatever we have said, we now prove to be true. And the decade of 2000 added another dimension to this attack. Now the government itself should be able to discredit the government funded school system. सरकार अपने and report year after year to tell us how horrible is the learning process and learning outcomes. And of course, again, in the market world, learning outcomes of primary or primary education in government school system. It never tells us the causes. There's not a single chapter on causes. Who did it and why is it so bad? The same education system which produces a scientist of India. The same education system will produce an administrative cadre of India. Same education system will produce thinkers of India. Same education system has to be not discredited. It's called Badnaam Committee. And then comes the decade of 2010 onwards. Now the education system will be so under various schemes like public-private partnership, sometimes directly auctioned, along with the land below the university or schools or colleges. And in the decade of 2000 started the phase of budget cuts for universities and colleges. Year after year, budgets were being cut. And the various institutions compelling colleges and universities to start self-financing courses. And what happens when you start self-financing courses? Then the whole character of knowledge changes. As was predicted by Birla Ambani report in year 2000, written by two of the greatest educations of this country, Mukesh Ambani and Kumar. And appropriately submitted to the then Economic Affairs Council of the Prime Minister, Ministry of Education. Economic Affairs Council. And Birla Ambani report, among many things, predicted this. In fact, recommended and predicted that when you privatize and commercialize, then you also commoditize, not just increasing fee structure, not just making education inaccessible to more than 95% of this people of this country, but also commoditizing knowledge. And when you commoditize knowledge, you change the whole character, appears to new character. I brought here what I got just before leaving my city, Gopal. I brought here those ads which you get in your. I will show you. These ads which you get daily in the daily newspaper in the morning. Look at this. Even if you cannot read it, look at it. This child says, I can, I must, I will be a winner. What does winner, being a winner means? It means I'll beat everybody else. I'll compete them out. That is the motto of this very expensive chain of private schools. Not just one school, chain in Delhi also. I must be a winner. It reminds me of the famous novel by Anne Marie, actress Shrugged, when she wrote about this architect who's full of this feeling for winning and competing everybody out. And that's called entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship means competing everybody out. By whatever means, doesn't matter whether it's a hook or crook, you must by some down run away. किसी तरीके से आपको जीतना है, इस बोर्ड में आगे बढ़ना है, some down run away. You must win. Doesn't matter what happens to society, what happens to your body, what happens to your neighborhood. This becomes a value of the neoliberal India. Being promoted and supported by the government without government support. It's impossible. The government has to permit it in order to do all this. There's another one I'm just going to make. It's also very important because there's also, after all, a human conscience. You cannot totally get rid of human conscience. So how to deal with it? The market knows how to deal with human conscience. So this school is not a chain, it's not a school chain, but it's a chain in Madhya Pradesh. This reads that we are collecting old clothes, winter wear, and other things like toys, pens, books, utensils, mobiles, etc., electronic gadgets, which are not used by us but are in usable condition. Please donate all this to us so that we can serve the poor of this. So this school has decided to declare poverty must remain. We'll adjust adjust with the poverty. Poverty has to be sustained. We'll keep charging fees beyond 95% of the children of this country, and yet having total tax exemption. This is the only business of India. I'm saying it in the sense of responsibility. Education has become the only business of India which is not taxed. Even a pawn shop is taxed. If a cycle rickshaw wala earns enough money, that is going to, he or she is going to be taxed. This one business is not taxed. Exclusion is the very basis of this education system. Exclusion is a word. Exclusion and inequality is the USP of our education system. In total violation of the Constitution, flagrant violation. और जब इतना बड़ा उल्लंघन भारत के संविधान का हुआ है कि गैर बराबरी और भेदभाव आधार बन चुके हैं इस पूरी शिक्षा व्यवस्था में, तो इस सवाल कभी तो पूछना चाहिए उस संविधान का क्या होगा? The Constitution has been adjusted, structurally adjusted in your decades. Now, these are useless documents. For saying this, it is a contempt of court. If somebody says the keynote address given or the inaugural address, the chairperson said, the person who gave inaugural address is an anti-nationalist, casteist, and extremist. The three famous epithets used by Ministry of HRD, not by Bandaru Datta. He is not important in this discourse. Used by Ministry of HRD against 5 students, only 5 students. In the campus having 5,000 students, 5 out of 5,000. Just because they raised their voice, and just because they said, please pay our scholarships in time. We survived on this scholarship. So therefore, they had to be declared anti-nationalist, casteist, extremist. They make the mistake of keep quoting Baba Sahib Ambedkar and Jyotirao Phule and Sarojini Naidu. And Ministry of HRD calls them this, exactly this. In the subject line of the letter sent by HRD Ministry to Vice Chancellor University of Hyderabad, this is precisely what it says. Subject anti-nationalist, casteist, and extremist activities on University of Hyderabad campus. But everything is not disappointing in this struggle in Hyderabad University. And this is what I'm talking about, transformative teaching. 15 faculty members of that university, not much reported. 15 faculty members of that university, all being Dalits, resigned from the official position they were holding as Dean Student Welfare or library, in charge of library, regular activity they were, 50, control examination. 15 office holders, faculty members, resigned from the position. And 2 non-SC/ST also resigned in solidarity. I think this is the first time it has happened in the history of India. Never happened before. History is being made, not only in that country, all over India. You all know it. Anti-nationalists, casteist, extremists, groups of students are now emerging spontaneously all over India. And they will force the present regime to drop that. The new politics of student organization. I go back again. I don't want to use a threat. I go back again. So the entire decade of 90s was a decade of destroying our state-funded education system. Then comes a decade of discrediting it. Then comes a decade of selling it out. That's what we are going through right now. पूरे दशक बर्बाद किया, अगले दशक में बदनाम किया और उसके अगले दशक इस बार अपने आप से पूछा, हम चुप क्यों थे? हम उठ खड़े क्यों नहीं? Why were we silent for 3 decades? Let's say even more than 3 decades, 86 policy. Those who spoke against 86 policy were students and teachers organizations in various parts of the country. They fought valiant battles, raising similar issues. But their voice eventually had to be silenced. केवल यही नहीं, जब हमारे हायर एजुकेशन कैंपसेस में भेदभाव बढ़ता जाता है, when discrimination keeps accentuating on our higher education campuses, तब भी हम चुप क्यों थे? When our school education is excluding masses of our children from education system, why did we remain silent? Have you thought about the quantum and character of exclusion? Probably you have. Let me share some hard-hitting data, unbelievable data. Only 6% of tribal children who begin education in class 1 are able to cross class 12 and become eligible for higher education. Otherwise, they are not eligible. And therefore, a brief reference to Right to Education Act 2009, which preferred to stop at class 8. Nobody has asked this question. Nobody in Parliament or state legislature have ever asked this question, why has this act stopped at class 8? Answers are now coming out. I'll come to that shortly. Now their answers are coming out. Why did they choose to stop at class 8, not go up to class 12? So after going to class 12, the fundamental right to education makes you eligible for higher education and gives you mobility beyond your caste-based professions of your parents. जो आप 12वीं के बाद आगे बढ़ते हैं, उच्च शिक्षा की ओर जाते हैं, तभी तो अपने माँ बाप के जातिवार पेशों से बाहर निकल पाएंगे। कैसे निकलेंगे? Only 8% of Dalits cross class 12, 9% of Muslims and 10% of OBCs. It means more than 90% of our young people, since the Republic of India was created, have been excluded from higher education, from mobility, social or economic or political or cultural. And more than 90% therefore have been excluded from the social justice agenda of reservation as well. And more will be excluded now because of increasing pace of privatization, commercialization and commoditizing of knowledge. ये तय करने के लिए कि ये जो गति है स्टूडेंट की बढ़ती रहे, वंचित करने की गति बढ़ती रहे, in order to ensure that pace of student keeps increasing, now we have a real political agenda before us called skill building. As you all know, being educationists and educators and teachers, that skill has been always an integral part of the concept of knowledge, integral part of education. Nobody defined this concept better than Gandhi. When he explained in 1937 All India Education Conference at Wardha, in article, beautiful, when he said, and very important, I'm just translating because it's not available in English. He said, today I'm not going to talk about primary education, I'm not going to talk about secondary education, I will not talk about higher education. And I will not talk about vocational education. He said, I will not talk about skills either. I will talk about education. Then he explains how productive work integrated into the curriculum, almost being the basis of curriculum, will become source of new knowledge, value system, and also skills. There is no time to expand on it. Please read the 1937 address of Gandhi. It's one of the seminal documents which should be part of, if it is not already part of B.Ed and M.Ed courses. And there is a whole document, not just of the curriculum, it talks about utilitarianism. Very few people know. Gandhi referred to utilitarianism in his educational address. Like I'm hoping one day class in India of Ambedkar will become essential reading for education. And hopefully one day Lenin's seminal document as well. Similarly, Gandhi's address to Varda education. But now there is a need to separate skill out of education. And why is it to be separated from education? Because only by separating it from education, you can make skill an agenda of exclusion. This is started by the previous review. This review has only increased the pace of skilling in India. It's amazing. Coiling of term, just think of it. As if for 5,000 years India did not have any skills. But we can digest it quietly. We the teachers and educators and educationists keep our mouth shut when we were told India did not have any skills for 5,000 years. Now we are going to give you skills. Those who built Red Fort and Taj Mahal and Ajanta and Ellora did not have any skills. They did not know chemistry, they did not know mathematics, they designed all this without mathematics. They did not know physics, they did not know engineering. And agenda is ready. We are being told that after class 5, why do you need to study? You are a poor child, or poor parents. Your parents are engaged in daily labor, they require help. They are working on brick mill, इन भट्टी में काम कर रहे हैं, तो तुम जाके उनके साथ काम करो. इसलिए तुमको इन भट्टी में कैसे काम करना उसकी स्किल दे देंगे कौशल. And if your parents, being Dalits, are engaged in clearing the manholes, so they are the ones who clean the manholes. All the Safai Karmacharis of all municipalities and corporations are Dalits. Your parents are engaged in cleaning the manhole under the Swachh India program. They will train you how to clean manholes. Another skill is needed. After class 5, go and earn money for your parents. And so, in order to ensure that you do not take this matter to the Supreme Court of India and keep quoting India's constitution against it, steps have been taken in advance. Child Labor Act has been amended, which says that there is no harm if children even below 14 years of age get engaged in parental professions. So casteist India is going to decide India's laws also. We decide. All advanced steps will be taken. You cannot go to court anymore. You cannot even say India's constitution being violated. They will tell you a law is there, passed by the parliament. And then, to make the matters worse, we are talking about soft skills. And all that what I am talking about, we have been the teachers, the educators, the education, silent about this. Now soft skills come. So what is soft skill? I have tried hard to understand this. What is hard and what is soft? The whole knowledge is now divided between hard and soft. So what are soft skills? Soft skill means you will be trained in English communication so that you can have a pleasant personality. So speaking Tamil, Telugu, Bangla, Assamese, or Khasi or Angami is from Nagaland, Khasi from Nagaland. If you are speaking those languages, then you cannot have a pleasant personality. Pleasing personality. Pleasing for whom? For the bosses to be on corporate India. India incorporated. soft skill people teach you. There are now already courses on it, both online and offline. This is the way we are talking now, online and offline. And courses will tell you, when you are being interviewed, keep smiling. मुस्कुराते रहना. अगर कोई ऐसी बात भी बोलती बुरी लगती तो भी मुस्कुराते रहना. कहते हैं कि अरे तुम दलित हो गए, तुमने कैसे फर्स्ट पोजीशन प्राप्त कर ली अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी में. मुस्कुराते. ये मत कहना कि बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर ने 1916 में ये लिखा था, 1936 पे, 1936 पे, that famous document Annihilation of Caste लिखा था. ये मत बताना. मुस्कुराते. Keep smiling. Don't resist. Only then you have soft skill. When you are told on a soft skill program, you must be harmonious with your co-workers. If your boss or another co-worker and you are a woman tries to molest you, remain harmonious. Don't resist. You lose your job. So whether you are being called a Dalit or you are being treated as a woman, is treated by the powerful male, remain harmonious and keep striving. Adopt yourself. Adaptive ability is another agenda of self. So Gandhi and Bhagat Singh never had any soft skills. That is why they became Gandhi and Bhagat Singh. And Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule also did not have soft skills. So Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule set up in 1848 the first modern school for girls, lower caste girls, and rebelled against Bengali by saying, we'll teach them in Marathi and give them modern knowledge in Marathi. It's not soft skills. They're really hard skills. When she formed an organization of women in 1852, and they started looking at the whole Maharashtra society, what is wrong being done with either Dalits or OBCs or with women, they started protesting. These are not soft skills. Where will you put it? When Ambedkar goes in 1926 in Mahad in Maharashtra and declares that he is going to now violate the rules and regulation of Mahad municipality. And the rules were, of course, casteist rules. They take water out of Mahad town's pond. Thus begins the modern struggle of annihilation of caste. Where will you put it? What skill is it? Like to argue, content, there is nothing like skill which is without cognition, without effectiveness. It's only cognition, human cognition, where a potter is potting. It's not just skill. It's potter's whole conception of what knowledge is. I do not know whether you are aware that, not by men. And if women refuse to do transplantation of paddy, India will starve. अगर देश की महिलाएं जो सब दलित और पिछड़े वर्ग की होती हैं या आदिवासी होती हैं, these women are either tribals or Dalits or OBCs. They never come from upper caste. अगर ये महिलाएं रोपा लगाने से इनकार कर दे तो भारत में अकाल पड़ता है. कोई सॉफ्ट स्किल, कोई वर्चुअल क्लासरूम से तो बचा नहीं. Paddy cannot be virtual. Has to be paddy. And have you ever seen these women when they are negotiating contract for transplantation? You have not seen what's being part of the curriculum. You go to a village and see how women sitting in the field, talking to the owner or landowner and negotiating contracts. Illiterate women. It's a bad word, illiterate. Non-literate women. Non-literate women are negotiating contracts in which arithmetic is involved, working hours are involved, quantum of amazing negotiation which I have witnessed. Please be a witness. Then you will understand what is the meaning of talking about the masses of this country denied and deprived of wealth and resources, for which they have been the only productive. I like to read just a small thing. I have taken a lot of time, I know, and chairperson must be getting anxious. This is a document, another document you can include in your supplementary readings on Savitribai. It's called A Forgotten Liberator. Just a small part, and then you know what I'm talking about. Just over 10% of the population, mostly from aggressive castes, with different levers of power in their hands, make sure that the rest continue to live in material and mental subjugation. Material and mental. And the neoliberal colonialism, to begin with, neoliberalism, has used the same aggressive caste to expand and sustain and strengthen its hold on the resources of our society. And provide the nation their cheap labor of the masses. While all wealth generation and development are taken up in the name of empowering the poor, such nation building leaves the poor more demoralized and more marginalized. They will struggle for food, drinking water, sanitation, education. Who are these people? More than 90% of them are Adivasis, Dalits, OBCs and Muslims. Their representation in the booming market economy, business and industrial domain, information technology and entertainment industry is next to nothing. However, the embedded Brahmanical media and academia, includes us, academia, presents a growth without equity as development with a human face. This is titled A Forgotten Liberator, The Life and Struggle of Savitribai Phule, edited by President and Mani and Pamela Sarkar. Translated from Marathi. What do you mean? Friends, I am trying to lay the whole perspective before you, in which you can think of what is the meaning of a transformative teacher. If we are not fighting and resisting against this destruction of Indian Republic, then what are we teaching for? Whether teaching in schools or universities, we are teachers. Let's recall 3 teachers. I was at the University of Hyderabad campus a few days ago, and there were placards in Velivada. Velivada, you know what it means? When Rohit and his ASA, Ambedkar School Association colleagues were ousted from the hostels, suspended and ousted from the hostel. You must have seen on the internet a very telling picture of Rohit and his friend holding a pillow in one hand and Ambedkar's photograph in another hand, walking out of the hostel. Where? They were going to set up a little tent in front of a few shops. They called it Velivada. Look at their imagination. Velivada in Telugu means Dalit tent. They said, you have thrown us out. We said, you cannot live in hostel. We also said, later on the Vice Chancellor wrote a modification of the earlier order. In modification, instead, I am reducing the punishment now. They can go to classrooms. Except for going to classroom, they cannot go to any other public space. They cannot speak to other students. They have to remain isolated. They cannot hold a meeting. They cannot form an organization. And therefore, these students chose to call themselves going to Velivada, Dalit Ghetto. That the Dalit Ghetto is now the nerve center for school movement all over. And if we are not willing to teach all this in our classrooms, what is happening to contemporary India and the contemporary India also, then what are we teaching? If this is not contemporary India, are we going to work for transforming the social, political, cultural, economic character of our Republic of India? And this is directly affecting our higher education campuses. If you are not going to stand up and say enough, we won't take it anymore. Whether it is the name of beef, reading that Haryana CM has announced, those who eat beef, जो गौमांस खाते हैं हमारे हरियाणा में, which provision of constitution his statement draws from, I don't know. Where does he draw? I am a vegetarian. Well, I cannot accept a violation of the constitution. We are citizens of this republic. So, where in the Hyderabad campus, I saw lots of placards, imaginative placards. One placard out of hundreds hanging around and pasted around. This was beautiful. It said, and the Bhota, and Pansari, and Kalburgi, and Rohit. What is common between the four? Now I'm running out of time, so I will be very short. What is common amongst the four people? There is rationality. Rationality is a common factor. इन चारों में कबोलकर, पांसरे और कलबुर्गी, रोहित रमन्ना, इनके बीच में क्या एक ही साझा क्या है? वो तार्किकता है, rationality. It is through rationality that oppressed of the world, not just of the subcontinent or of India, oppressed of the world have always fought for their human rights. If they did not have rationality, they cannot fight for it. Rationality is the very basis. And therefore, rationality has to be destroyed. When Dabholkar uses his campaign against superstition, irrational mindset, superstition, and challenging therefore the God-man of India, जितने साधु संत जो पैसा बना रहे हैं साधु संतों के नाम पर, he challenges them, he becomes a threat, not just to those specific God-men, he becomes a threat to entire ruling class and ruling caste. Therefore, he had to be killed. What was the fault of Pansari? He said, I will not accept that Shivaji was an anti-Muslim king. You've been telling me for decades, you've been creating the myth, but I know I will not accept because I've read what Shivaji did in his lifetime. I've read enough. And he writes a little booklet. There is a size of this book has did research. It's Annihilation of Caste by Ambedkar, 1936. Little booklet in Marathi, now translated in many languages, which establishes that Shivaji was a secular king. He was a king, of course, from the feudal history. He was a king. At the same time, he was a secular king. All his senior positions were occupied in army or politics. Administration were occupied by Muslims. He did not go around breaking mosques, only building temples. All this is well established now. Therefore, his booklet became dangerous. Therefore, he also had to be killed. And what was the fault of Kalburgi? He was a great scholar of Kannada's Vachana Sahitya, Vachana literature. To 12वीं शताब्दी में शुरू हुआ, 12th century onwards. He has written volumes and volumes. Now volumes are published in Kannada by the Karnataka government. And in that production of knowledge, he established how in 12th century Baswana stood up against the entire caste system, the notion of caste. How he raised a voice against all forms of oppression and subjugation in his time and gave birth to the Lingayat community, which is the dominant community in Karnataka. And today Lingayat community is doing exactly what was never recommended or advocated, articulated by Baswana against the founder of that community. He established all this. Therefore, Yes, I'm just going to nominate you. Rohit is saying in his society, no, people have not understood or refuse to understand. The value of a man is a philosophical value. The value of a man was reduced to his immediate attitude. You are either Bengali or a Tamil or a Telugu or Punjabi, either you are Dalit or a non-Dalit, you decide your attitude first. Or a Muslim or non-Muslim. And nearest possibility, that is the nearest possibility, reduced to a vote. Without that vote, ruling class cannot rule. To a number, Aadhaar card number. Your fingerprints and iris is recorded, you cannot get out of it. You are in trap. It's not recorded in the global internet system. To a thing, to a commodity, whole system is trying to earn from it. Never was a man treated as a mind. Beautiful sentence. As a glorious thing made up of stardust is true in every field, in studies, in speech, in politics, and in dying and living. Then he says, my birth is a fatal accident. You read it, it was old, but now the story of his childhood is out. How he was totally alienated. And how his mother and his two siblings, brother and sister, including him, how they were used as child laborers. The mother was always a second-class citizen in that family where she was adopted. The whole childhood alienation, that was a fatal accident. We could not control it. I can never recover from my childhood loneliness. This is an indictment against the whole alienation of the capitalist society, dominated by the Varnashram, the caste system. And he goes on to then talk about how Marx and Ambedkar have to be read together. Look at the conception. Marx and Ambedkar have to be read together. Because class and caste both are important determinants of what will happen to our country. And he writes very powerfully, the Russian Revolution took place by organizing the working class because of the industrial society. Young Dalits were already. Chinese Revolution took place by organizing the peasantry because it was an agrarian society. But revolution in India cannot take place in the same ways as it happened in Russia or China because we are a caste-based society. Therefore, caste has to be annihilated to the middle society. Very powerful. And Ambedkar saw all this prophetically. And therefore, Ambedkar writes in his Annihilation of Caste in 1936, he is addressing the people from the lower caste, the oppressed caste, he said, oppressed caste, who invited him to give this lecture, which was never given, never delivered. This is a different story. Yours is more difficult than the other national causes, the cause of Swaraj. In the fight for Swaraj, you fight with the whole nation on your side. In this, you have to fight against the whole nation. When you talk of caste annihilation, you have to fight against the whole nation, and that too your own. But it is more important than Swaraj. Now watch what he is saying to all of us. There is no use having Swaraj if you cannot defend it. And we fail to defend it. More important than the question of defending Swaraj is the question of defending the Hindus under the Swaraj. The thing is anti-Hindu. I'm talking about how to defend Hindus in the Swaraj. In my opinion, only when the Hindu society becomes a casteless society that can hope to have strength enough to defend itself. Without such internal strength, Swaraj by Hindus may turn out to be only a step towards another slave movement. And we are back to where what he predicted we should will be. You are enslaved once more. The teacher has to stand. Gandhi said in his Hind Swaraj in 1909, 1909 के स्वराज ने गांधी ने लिखा, बहुत जबरदस्त बात लिखा। पूछा गया वो खुद ही सवाल पूछे खुद ही जवाब देते हैं। तो जर्नलिस्ट आदमी पूछता है मिस्टर गांधी से कि आप तो खुद एडवोकेट हैं, लॉयर हैं, और आप लॉयर्स के खिलाफ और लीगल प्रोफेशन के खिलाफ इतना देख रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं इन दौरान में, ऐसा क्यों? उन्होंने कहा he says that the British established a judicial system in India through courts to establish the notion in this country that we never had ways of providing justice in Indian history. Therefore, they superimposed their system of justice. And Indian lawyers, by participating in the legal profession, by going to the courts, they legitimize and justify that claim of British Raj. अब वकील बन के उनको न्यायचित करते हैं वैधानिक उस पूरे न्याय प्रणाली, और इसलिए he said I give a call. If our lawyers stop practicing in courts, stop cooperating with this superimposition of a foreign court system, then British colonialism will begin to break down. So it is the intellectuals of this country who have this moral duty and constitutional obligation, because we have access to that knowledge of history, of science and social science, of languages. It is our intellectual and moral duty to stand up against this injustice and to teach our future generation who we teach how to stand up for justice and for what is truth and right. Just like Jyotiba Phule said, truth. Therefore, he called his organization Satya Shodhak Shikshak Samaj, Society in Pursuit of Truth. सत्य की खोज में समाज करना, और वो हमें अपने सारे विद्यार्थियों को, चाहे स्कूल में हो, चाहे कॉलेज में हो, चाहे यूनिवर्सिटी में हो, इनको बनाना है to make all our students सत्य शोधक in true sense of Jyotiba Phule, the first organic intellectual of modern India, in pursuit of it. And I conclude by two poems. It is adopted for our struggle for education, for reconstructing our education system. Adopted in the spirit of Ambedkar, struggle, educate, agitate and organize. शिक्षित करो, संघर्ष करो, संगठित करो. In that spirit, and calling all those who remain silent, do not raise their voices, do not organize. And this poem is originated from Martin Buber, very famous European poet. We have adopted it in Hindi. मैं खामोश रहा, हम सब खामोश रहे जब उन्होंने मजदूरों का दमन किया. मैं खामोश रहा क्योंकि मैं मजदूर था, हम मजदूर थे. जब उन्होंने किसानों की जमीनें छीनी, मैं बिल्कुल नहीं बोला क्योंकि ना मैं किसान था, ना वो मेरी जमीन थी. जब उन्होंने महिलाओं के साथ बलात्कार किए, मैं खामोश रहा. करने वालों जेल में ठूसा और जुर्म उठाए, like that we did to occupy UTC, we are doing it to all protest movements right now in all campuses of our country. तब उनको जेल में ठूसा और जुर्म उठाए, मैं खामोश रहा क्योंकि मैं जीने से नहीं था, मैं प्रोटेस्ट नहीं था. जब उन्होंने सरकारी स्कूलों पर हमला किया, मैं चुप रहा. सुनो तो मैं वहां पढ़ता था, मैं वहां पढ़ता था. लेकिन जब वो मेरे पीछे आए, इस ओरिजिनल फ्रॉम मार्टिन बुबर, जब वो मेरे पीछे आए, तब बोलने के लिए कोई बचा ही नहीं था क्योंकि मैं अकेला था. It must not be like this. What should it be like? What way wrote this 3rd of September poem, which one of his friends from a Midwestern Association took out from his diary and made it public. Rohit writes, one day you will understand why I was a busy. I hope someone will translate this in Hindi. It will become, it will be straightforward, at least not in Kannada. One day you will understand why I was aggressive. On that day, you will understand
you will get to know why I apologized. On that day you will understand there are traps beyond the fences. Fence is a trap. Even if you cross this fence, there are other traps. We think by crossing this fence we will liberate ourselves. No. Other forces of oppression and subjugation waiting to trap it. Is able to see it. One day you will find me in the history. In the bad light, in the yellow papers, we place in the bad light that we call internationalists, extremists, castes. And you will wish I was wiser.